Each woman in these stories, as we've seen, contrasts with less faithful insiders. The foreigners are not just tolerated, they're celebrated as ones who bring fresh hope and faith and new life. Think about Matthew's Gospel, that almost immediately we have the Magi, the three wise men, or the wise men, we don't know how many there are, the wise men from the East, foreigners who are the first to name Jesus King of the Jews and to say that they have come to worship him. The Roman centurion in chapter 8, whose servant is ill and who comes to Jesus for help and who calls him Lord and expresses his faith that Jesus' word alone will be enough to heal. In the classic liturgy around the Eucharist, those words have entered in. Lord, I am not worthy that you should enter under my roof, but only say the word and my soul shall be healed. Whether or not those words are part of your liturgical tradition, imagine standing alongside this centurion and think of what a centurion stood for in that time and place. Not just a foreigner, but a hated foreigner, one of the overlords, one of the occupiers. What might it mean to be invited in Matthew's Gospel to stand beside him and say these words? Jesus' response to him, truly I tell you, in no one in Israel have I found such faith. I tell you, many will come from east and west and will eat with Abraham and Isaac and Jacob in the kingdom of heaven. Sends us back to the beginning of the story and reminds us that it's not just a family story. The promise to Abraham wasn't just for descendants. It was that so through his family, all the families of the earth would be blessed. So here is Jesus picking that up and offering it as the gift to the centurion who has offered his faith as a gift to Jesus. The encounter with the Canaanite woman, which is there in a number of the Gospels, sometimes she's called the Syrophoenician woman, is a really, really wonderful carrying on of the story of our grandmothers. Jesus has gone into foreign territory, which Jesus liked to do. One wonders whether he was taking his disciples on deliberate trips to open their minds and to push them beyond where they were comfortable. So here he is over in Tyre and Sidon, the Phoenician territories. And this woman comes to him and asks him to heal her daughter. And the words of Jesus have caused all sorts of wonderings about how we should interpret them. Woman, I've come to give the food to the children of Israel, not to the dogs. However you read it, it's rude. I like to imagine Jesus' grandmothers leaning out from their frame and giving him a clip over the ear. I could be wrong, feel free to read it another way, but I just quite like to imagine that Jesus at this point is either making a point or needs a little bit of education from his grandmothers. Whatever happens, this Canaanite woman steps up to the plate for the education. She is a woman who is desperate. She's a woman who is fighting for her child, as women have done so often before and since. And she uses her wit and her wisdom as Jesus' grandmothers have done. When she says to him, yes, but even the dogs under the table can share the crumbs from the children. And there is this wonderful sense that the women have been telling us all along that it's not about us against them, it's about us. And what happens when we all share the crumbs? Matthew hasn't included that story accidentally. there are wonderful resonances of the stories that we've been reading. And as Jesus is learning, so are his disciples, us, learning what it means to follow him. Who might we think the good news of Jesus is limited to? Who might we need to learn that in fact there are no limits? It grows and it expands as it is shared. So many other marginal people encountered by Jesus through Matthew's gospel: tax collectors, sinners, women, children, the sick, all of those traditionally seen as being not quite good enough. Jesus' primary ministry is seen as being to anyone who comes and expresses their need to him. And when they leave, they have received healing and forgiveness and cleansing and acceptance. Jesus is full of the DNA of his grandmothers. The lessons that have been learnt at their knees are well integrated. Any idea that privilege or favouritism might be felt by insiders has been turned upside down in these wonderful stories of the kingdom of God. And this is the good news that Matthew is sending us away with and inviting us to live in. Women surround Jesus at his crucifixion. While the disciples have fled in terror, they stay and they witness the pain and the anguish. They're also those who receive the first news of the resurrection, and they are the ones who carry that news out. They are the first evangelists. Jesus' new family of disciples is marked by those who hear and do, those who receive those who come in need and who send them away with forgiveness and healing and cleansing and acceptance. These are the stories that come to us through the stories of these women and through the rest of the Gospels. By including these stories of these women right at the beginning as the lens that we read everything else through, Matthew alerts us to the startling newness of the kingdom of God. It's a kingdom that pulls the rug out underneath any of our sense that we might be privileged or exclusive, that we might be above other people or in front of other people in the queue. It's a kingdom that I think even laughs gently at those with pretensions of insider status. And sometimes that's us ourselves. We need to be looking in the mirror while we're reading these things. It's a kingdom that requires us to constantly question our areas of exclusion, our points of prejudice. I think as we imagine each of these women, if we hold them with us as our journey, as we journey on, they will help us ask these questions. But they'll also stand with us when we feel that we are the ones who are being excluded, whose voices are taken away. You can hear their encouragement, see their sidelong looks at us going, "It's okay, you've got a place here." Don't let them keep you down, they're saying. Come out into the light because you have gifts to give and you owe it to your descendants and the descendants in faith to keep passing those gifts along. We're called to continue telling the good news so that all, without exception, might be invited into these spacious places that these women call us into, to be overwhelmed by the joy of the good news of Jesus Christ. God bless Jesus' grandmothers.